Outstanding Public Service Award from Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney, worked in the Office of Secretary of Defense, Office of Net Assessment, consultant to the National Intelligence Council, and it goes on and on and on. Written many books, very provocative speaker. He gave us a cloaking today. He actually was here a couple of years ago. And as I mentioned, we have lots of books here that you're free to take. One, a very nice book he also left us last time, Underestimated Our Not So Peaceful Nuclear Future. Today, Henry is going to give us his take on precisely the problem you're working on for your capstone, the class project on the potential for a South Korea, and or Japan breakout from the NPT. So without further ado, Henry.
Professor and Professor Doc for picking a really timely topic. About 5 years ago, I managed to get a grant to look into this question. And I was approached by someone from a foundation who said, well, what are you doing to prevent Japan from opening up its reprocessing plant in the Amuri Prefecture, Akasha? And I more or less said, you know, people have been breaking their pick on that one for about 30 years. I don't have any relatives in Japan. I don't read kanji. I just, you know, what do you think? I mean, we can't lecture them any more than we have. What do you have in mind? I said, well, what do you have in mind? It seemed like an open invitation for money. Yeah? So I was on the spot. So I got an idea. Instead of telling them what we think, let's give them a spotlight on a bad future and ask what they think and take notes. And what we did is I managed to have a number of analysts. I have pass this around. These are some of the studies. We're still going to be releasing more. Actually, I can get rid of all those. They're not many. I have 3. We'll give the back row a chance, and then this row. To not only think about Japan, South Korea with nuclear weapons, but getting more than the first weapon. What would it cost? What would the forces look like? What would they target? What would the neighbors do? And then we thought we'd contract someone to explain why and how maybe China and North Korea would ramp up. And then what I suggested was that we get Chinese, South Korean, Japanese, and in some cases Russians to come and talk about, well, how they, what they thought about these scenarios. Did that seem like anything they were concerned about or fanciful? I was told at the time that this was the riskiest, wild-haired project that this particular foundation had funded. And the reason why, they said, is, well, no one will come. And if they come, no one will say anything. And if they say anything, they won't get along. Well, that's pretty good. They were wrong on the first, the second, and the third. And there was a lot of interesting discussion. What I'm going to share with you today actually is old stuff that now looks still fresh. I think I won't belabor why all of the arguments of the diplomatic set as to why Japan would never go nuclear and why South Korea would never go nuclear actually don't hold up. Arguably, South Korea has taken a couple of runs at the goalpost already. Not once, but at least twice. And we caught them out. They're now clamoring for a third run. In the case of Japan, one fellow put it, well, of course they have a program. How else do you think they get us to do what they get us to do for them? Now, I think that's a little glib, but there's something to it. If you take a look at what is said, both publicly and privately, by senior officials in Japan, it's not as though they don't talk about an option. They do. And they constantly worry about whether the United States is going to, quote unquote, uphold its security regimes. So, this is possible. I think North Korea, in this context, becomes a catalyst for change. We see what looks to be possibly a boosted device. Do I need to explain technically what boosting is about? By the way, candor now is your only hope. If you don't admit what you don't know now, it becomes a problem later. You get penalized later. Here you get rewarded. That's such a good question. Does anybody need some explanation on what boosting is? And there's not. All right, well, essentially fission is when you take neutrons and you break up the nucleus of an element, in this case uranium, and it releases U-235, 2 or more neutrons, which then allows a chain reaction. And in each case, there's a little bit of matter given up. And when you do energy equals mass times the speed of light times a constant, you end up with a lot of energy if you keep going. One way to make sure that there are enough neutrons to fully fission all of the material, because these things have a tendency to miss the target, is to add neutrons. And one way to do that is to put tritium in a fission device. If you do, let's go back here. Well, if you do, the neutrons will fuse deuterium and tritium that you might put and inject into the device by means of a, let's see, do we have a design here? Yeah, here we go. You have deuterium and tritium gas, you inject it into the middle of the device, it implodes, the fissioning begins, and about 1 second later, you get a fusion reaction from the heat. Not much energy released, but a whole heck of a lot of additional neutrons. Yeah. And those neutrons help continue and more completely fission. So you can, with boosting, do two things that, by the way, you'll notice that there's evidence, people argue, of lithium-6 production. Well, why would you want, what does lithium-6 have to do with tritium? Well, if you put lithium-6 in the fuel rod of a regular reactor, a slow fissioning machine producing steady amounts of heat, those neutrons hit the lithium, and that lithium, lithium-6 in particular, produces a lot of tritium that you can extract in a plant that looks like this. We have one, Russians have one. The South Koreans and North Koreans have. Now, in this case, they're removing tritium from heavy water that goes into a heavy water reactor at Ulsan. Do you have a picture of that? Yeah, there you go. There are 4 of them. And you do that for occupational hazard reasons, because tritium can harm people. But what's interesting is they not only remove it, they keep topping it off, and they don't sell it. They've got enough to boost approximately 1,000 nuclear weapons. But it isn't just them, as I say. It's also the folks in North Korea. So it could be we're moving towards a boosted world. It won't be first generation 1945 designs, but probably something more like 1952 or better. And the other thing that boosting does, technically, which is different, Have you been dragged through the controversy of reactor versus weapons-grade plutonium? Have they been hit with that yet? No. Social scientists. My God. How many of you are nuclear engineers? Well, you're supposed to believe you never can make bomb material from a power reactor. That's your job to study these data. Right? It's dead wrong. The argument about plutonium and its usability from power reactors turns on the question of isotopes. How many remember isotopes from high school chemistry? You have, every element has the same number of protons, but it can have different numbers of neutrons. And when the neutrons vary, you get different isotopes of the same element. In the case of plutonium, the most desirable weapons forms are isotopes that are odd, in particular plutonium-239 and to a lesser extent 241. Even isotope plutonium is not so good, particularly 240. And the reason why is 240 has much more neutron background. That is to say, it spontaneously releases neutrons. Why is that a problem? When you bring two subcritical masses of plutonium together, slowly, those neutrons start to set off fissioning, which heats things up and blows it apart. So you have to really bring it together quickly. Also, 240 puts out heat. Now, heat's not a big deal if you have modern explosives like HDX, which is heat insensitive, or you know how to make a heat sink, which is like not rocket surgery. But, you don't want to do that. Use a weapons grade. However, the pre-ignition problem was one that produced a little bit of uncertainty about the yield, and weapons designers and engineers hate uncertainty. They don't like humans. That's the reason I do it. I'm kidding. All right. So, the point here is engineering is an effort to reduce uncertainty budgets. It's sort of the game. Right? You're not able to. So, people for years argued this. Boosting obviates this. And the reason why is before there's pre-ignition, you overwhelm the whole population of plutonium with lots of extra neutrons. You don't have pre-ignition. You have higher efficiency. So with boosting, reactor grade just presents a heat problem, which is not a big deal. A heat sink is not a big deal to build. Now, has anyone made a bomb with reactor grade? No, but the Swedes, Pakistanis, Indians have all talked about that plan. We set off something which included something near reactor grade in the 60s. The Indians bragged about doing it. It's out there. It could be the future is in something that hasn't happened. By the way, one way to deal with the future is to deny the possibility of something if it hasn't happened yet. That's fine. Technically, that's kind of dumb. But if you're a diplomat, you do it. Okay? So this is a big debate. I'm here to tell you boosting is bringing us back into that debate. In a way, technically, it was harder to do. Now, that means you can get higher yield to weight ratios. You can make more warheads from a given amount of material, and the arsenal size could be measured in the case of North Korea in larger numbers. I don't think hundreds, but larger numbers. Some people argue hundreds. In any case, it changes things a little. And that development is something that is underway. Now, with regard to the South Koreans, you have all sorts of arguments that they're wedged between not just North Korea and China, but North Korea and Japan as arming states.
What are they referring to in the case of Japan? They don't have nuclear weapons. Why do they think Japan is arming? By the way, I think the operative quote is, yes. So we will end up sandwiched between two terrifying threats, a nuclear-armed country in the north and the other in the east. By the way, that's not China. It's the opposite direction. It's Japan. It's very subtle. Like geography allows you to decode this. They're saying this because of Russia and their plutonium program. Now, before we leave that, you should know that in the latest kerfuffle about what North Korea is up to, the chosen ilbo, which is very hawkish, right wing, said, hey, we could make weapons in 18 months. Let's do it. Go team, go. And they pointed out these heavy water reactors and said, wow, we've got 7,000 metric tons of spent fuel. We could make, a really large number, 74 metric tons of plutonium. Does anybody here have a rough idea of how many kilograms it takes to make a bomb if you use even 1945 Mark III Trinity technology, which, by the way, is like nobody in the right mind would probably do that. Go to Love Tape Pit on Core 1949 50 technology, microacoustic. But even if using that conservatively, does anybody know roughly how many kilograms it takes to make a bomb? 8 comes from the IEA. Yeah, that's a consensus international diplomatic figure. So it's all 4. Okay, DOE says 4 if it's weapons grade. Does anybody know who Richard Garland was or is? Well, yeah, you're nodding, but you're a teacher, you don't count. Anybody here? Well, look him up. He's got an essay in the Federation of American Scientists dated in the 90s where he explains as a weapons designer, so he's sort of credible. He's not, someone who studied constitutional law for 4 years. That would be me. I mean, somebody who's been heavy metal. Okay. He says if you use reactor grade, it's 30% penalty, so it's a little more than 5 kgs. And that's assuming a crude 1945 design. All right, so you divide, 74 tons by 5, you got a really big number. Yeah? Someone is authorized to do that division on their phone right now. Anybody ready? 74 divided, 74, see, a ton is 1,000 kilograms, so it would be 74 tons would be 74,000 kilograms divided by 5. What do you get?
14,800.
1,800. How many nuclear weapons do we have deployed strategically right now? The U.S. About 14, what is it?
14,800.
Yeah, about that. That's not bad. For starters, if you just want to start. So this isn't about onesies. This is the electron. Now, turns out if you look at the fine print, they exaggerate some things. It's really not that much. By the way, it's not 1,400. It's 4,500.
I just did 70,000 divided by.
What's 70,000?
Or 74,000, sorry, divided
By 5, and you get, what do you get?
14,000.
14,000. Okay, well, 14,000, not like 1,400. Was it 1,400 is what we have deployed?
Right.
So 14,000, wow, that's like 10 times more.
Right.
Now that sounds right. But actually the figure is, don't worry, it's only 45. No worries. Have I got your attention? I mean, in other words, the idea that South Korea would only get one of these is an interesting theory. But if it gets into this, they might get more. How many nuclear weapons did South Korea have deployed on its soil, tactical nuclear weapons as a hydrocold war? Anybody know? You might want to know how many they might want. By the way, you can make a mistake here. You can even guess. I'm not giving you a grade. How many?
20.
How many?
20.
20? Do I hear 20? Do I hear more?
50.
50. Do I hear 50? Do I hear more?
100.
100, do I hear more? Keep going. I'm not going to come up with the answer, you will. How much more?
200.
200, do I hear more?
300.
300, do I hear more?
500.
500, do I hear more?
1,000.
There you go. 900, close enough. Government work. That's a lot of weapons, not one. So would they deploy that many? Don't know, but they had that many on their soil. They are very attached to the idea of tactical nuclear weapons. How else would they use nuclear weapons? Did they use them tactically for sea? What is it that North Korea has now? What we have to worry about? What are they launching from their submarines? It's a newspaper. We're trying to. North Korea. Ballistic missiles. Well, how are you going to get the submarine? Well, you don't know exactly where it is. Area ammunition. Oh man, have you ever seen one of these things go off in the water? Take a look on the Livermore website. They have tests from the past filmed. You can see one of these things going off in the water, I bet. It's enormous, or as Trump would say, huge. So that's how you take care of that. How many do you need of those? Well, I don't know. How many did we have? How many nuclear depth charges the United States have in light bulb for deploying on ships? These capstone projects are getting complicated. They'll have to know this stuff. Who's going to guess first? How about you? How much? How many?
4,000.
Three. You go ahead of the class. I like the way you think.
My graduate student.
Okay. All right, 3,000. So how many will they get? I don't know. But are they going to get just one if they get into this game? Probably not. All right, if they have missiles, does anybody know what the range of the missiles are? How far? Yeah, go ahead.
The ones in North Korea or
South Korea. We're worried about South Korea, right? This is the capstone project. South Korea, right?
like 1,000 kilometers ish
Yeah.
in that range.
Further.
Or,
It's 1,500.
okay, yeah. Not like ours, but like medium range.
So where does that reach?
Like China.
Oh! How many targets do they need to shoot in China?
A lot.
Are you with me now? Do I have your... When you do your capstone project, you have to think about several generations and larger numbers, maybe, if China or North Korea responds. What is it that North Korea is doing? Are they settling for 2 or 3? No. Are they settling for just ground-based mobile missiles? No. They want to have them submarine-based. Huh. Do they have any bombers? Ooh. All sorts of questions. How many bases are there in North Korea? Where are they? Can you hit them? Are they in tunnels? How many tunnels are there in North Korea? Hiding things about it. I have a rough number at least. Okay, not you.
Say thousands of miles.
No, tunnels. How many?
How many tunnels?
How many targets do we have?
Thousands.
Oh, thousands. Well, that's okay. You're going to the State Department, not the Defense Department. Who wants to go to the Defense Department? I need to say more than not the order of magnitude, but we got the order of magnitude, but that only gets you to the State Department. Now, who wants to go to the Defense Department? What's the number?
3,000.
It's a good start. Keep going.
3,000.
You're getting very close. It's about 10, 12,000. How do you knock out a tunnel? What did we just do in Afghanistan?
From their bombs.
It was a volumetric. I won't even burden on what that is. What was the yield on that?
About 12 tons, not kilotons, but tons.
It was 1/10 of a kiloton.
Yes.
Okay? That was the size of what? The Davy Crockett nuclear weapon. Oh, how many will they need? Okay, I think what I'm doing is grinding you into recognition that if they get into this game, it could be a big number. It may not be a small number. Now, lots of people will say, well, they're going to want to be like the 51st state, Great Britain. And what they're going to do is say, well, we want to just be integrated with the U.S. And what we'll do is we'll help the U.S. do its part by throwing in some weapons. Well, maybe. Does anybody know what the history is of South Korea and the U.S.? Is it one that's just without complaint? Or are there nationalists who think the Americans are the problem? By the way, that's a legal question. If you get some of these, those nationalists will come out. Will they control policy? Don't know. Interesting question. Same problem in Japan. So when you scratch the itch and you think, oh, well, we'll just get a few to bring us closer to the United States, it may blow up in your face diplomatically, and you'll find it in your own domestic base. You might say, now let's get our own force. Free. If you think this is totally crazy, look up new rightists in Japan and check out how many there are. Does anybody know? They're about 10% registered. The problem with that number is if you ask somebody, do you dislike fill in the blank? They say, oh, no. But if you drink with them heavily, they go, of course they do. So when you ask people, are you a new rightist? They say 10%. The real figure might be as high as twice as much. 20%? And whether they take control or not, they shape policy in Japan in one significant way. They are the only group that has a distinct foreign policy objective and outlook, and that is to free the United States, to establish Japan as an independent actor, and to crack down on their neighbors. Oh, they also want nuclear weapons. So, I mean, I don't know. When people say this can't happen, one argument is, both countries wouldn't want to risk upsetting the United States. Yeah, that's a pretty good argument. Does anybody know how much India upset the United States when it got nuclear weapons? Almost not at all. We have since gotten over being upset. And we've rewarded it. Now, India is not a security alliance country. South Korea and Japan are. Are we going to jeopardize our relations with them over bombs? Did we do that with Great Britain or France? By the way, we did not prefer either of those countries to get those bombs. How about Pakistan? A non-NATO ally. Food for thought, just saying. All right, how many minutes have I burned off already? I'm fine.
This is another 25.
Well, you want another 25? Is this good for you?
Very good for me.
Yeah, you got a question already.
No.
You just said, yeah, you like what you're hearing.
Yeah.
No. No, thumbs up. Okay. I'll take that as a yes. Oh, here's something interesting. Because we're so concerned about South Korea and Japan possibly breaking out and getting plutonium weapons, we're helping them figure out how to close the fuel cycle. Does anybody know what closing the fuel cycle means? Helping them figure out how to recycle plutonium, which would then allow them to figure out how to efficiently, well, extract material to make bombs, too. Why are we doing that? By the way, I only have cynical, snarky answers, but I'm just curious if anybody here has any ideas. By the way, we're doing it with China as well and Japan. It's called Gen 4. It used to be called GNAP. It's the Department of Energy's cooperative research program overseas. All right, well, there's silence. How many nuclear engineers are there here? I mean, I'm serious. How many hands? You need to know the answer to this because you might end up going overseas and doing this. Inquiring minds would want to know, why am I going there? Well, partly, the United States has a nuclear program, and we don't fund, we're not supposed to fund things that are of immediate commercial use. That's what private industry is supposed to do, to the extent it's private. So we do R&D. We do things that are not commercially immediately viable. That's to say, they lose money. It's one of the reasons we have government, to do things that lose money, okay? If it makes money, you're supposed to let somebody else do it, not the government. Now, the Department of Energy is interested in fast reactors. Fast reactors are reactors that don't just use regular neutrons, but ones that have lots of energy. Enough energy to fission not just U-235, but U-238, which is not fission prone. And it turns almost immediately into plutonium. A lot of it's weapons grade, for what it's worth. And you recycle that. Now, why would you do that? Well, it's because in the 1960s, we thought there'd be how many reactors online by the year 2000?
10,000?
That's not bad. About 2,000. Sometimes you'll hear people say 4, but it's measured in thousands. How many did we actually have online in the U.S.? 100, roughly. Oops. Well, we were going to run out of uranium. Well, we have to go to fast reactors to exploit the plentiful isotope, which is 99.3% of all the stuff in nature, called U-238, and we'll convert it into plutonium, and then we'll separate that, and then on. Along the way, all the projections turned out to be wrong. Oh, the program continues. Said nobody wants to fund it, so what do? You cooperate with someone else. Cooperative programs, I always say, are the refuge of the last desperate hope to keep something alive. Totally cynical, sarcastic, snarky, International Space Station, there's an example. One of the great, highly leveraged investments. I see smiles on the old. I don't know, fusion research, which actually I kind of like because it's close to what I care about the most, which is tapping energy from the moon. It's about as probable. It takes a long time, but it's, basically. All right, so you have this done cooperatively. So we're helping that along with pyroreprocessing, which is a form of reprocessing. In the case of Japan, we have this situation. You have Rakan, which is a big, do I have a picture of that? I guess I don't. That's bad. Oh, well. Look it up. I once took a journalism course, and the only thing I learned from the editing class was this man screaming at me whenever I had a question. Look it up. Not that approach. But this chart shows that this plant will produce 8 tons of plutonium a year when it comes online. It's supposed to come online in October of 2018. That's really soon. And it will produce, maybe the first year a little less, maybe 3 or 4 tons, but in about 2 years it'll be up to 8 tons. This is a projection of how much material we stockpile. Does anybody know how many reactors are operating in Japan right now? Yeah, 2 and 3. And there'll be several more. And some of them actually will be able to burn mixed oxide fuel that has some plutonium processing point, and mostly uranium. But even with all that, this is the projected mounting. By 2025, almost 100 tons. Again, you do the math. Right now, they already on their soil have 2,500 weapons worth of separated plutonium. This is referred to sometimes quietly as our virtual. And if you want to keep the Chinese from ramping up, you say, well, if you don't behave, we could. What about the Chinese? Oh, by the way, the Japanese say they don't know how to do anything, but they really know a lot about fusion. And these are some institutes. I'm going to leave this. It's in the back, I think, of one of those publications. All this stuff's on my web. It's all free. The Chinese, the argument is, well, we already have nuclear. So we want to do what the Japanese are doing.
We want to reprocess too. In fact, we want to buy a plant from the French, pretty much designed to do the exact same amount of material per year. And they did. I pointed out to them, I have traveled over there 3 times a year for the last 4 years. In the case of China, I talked to them, I said, you complain vociferously about the Japanese pursuing what you think is a weapons option by doing reprocessing. How is it that you can do it and not be free of the complaint? Maybe I should back up. I'm ruining my own story. I have so few stories, I gotta make sure I answer it. When you ask the Japanese if they're doing reprocessing to get a virtual deterrent for weapons purposes, what do they say? They say, no, we're doing it for peaceful purposes. We, they say, are special. How's that? Well, we were bombed by you. We know the horrors of nuclear war. We have invested 20+ billion to build Plutonium already. No one else has as much. Everyone knows we wouldn't make it through bombs. We're special. Now, when I first heard this from someone in the foreign ministry, pretty senior, I said, okay, have you talked to your neighbors to see how they see it? And they looked at me with a blank face and said, no. I said, really? Then they immediately said, well, if you'd like to do so, let us know how it turns out. I said, you gotta be kidding. I said, I'll do it, but I mean, really? I was told actually by the State Department that they don't talk to the neighbors about it. So I went to the Blue House right after that visit and talked with the National Security Advisor to the Premier, Prime Minister. And I said, well, the Japanese say they're special. You shouldn't special. You could see steam coming out of this man's ears when I said that. He said, special? What the hell do you think we are? We're on the border with a country that has nuclear weapons. We have been run over recently by them, and within memory. We're special too. Now, when I went to China, I just told you that they said, well, we don't want to make nuclear weapons with this plutonium because, well, we're special. We already have nuclear weapons. And we would only use it, as they said, for peaceful purposes. I said, yeah, but that's what the Japanese say. And you're already complaining about that. To which they got real quiet. I said, there are paranoid people like me advising people in the Defense Department, where I used to work, that you say you have a small number. I'm fully willing and prepared to believe that's true, but that's what you want us to believe. You're not really telling us what you have. And you can't really get more nuclear weapons unless you get a lot more enriched uranium. By the way, they are building an enormous amount of highly enriched uranium generating capacity in the enrichment program in excess of their needs, way in excess of their needs, which makes you kind of nutty, paranoid. But of course, it could just be the typical nuclear engineer boosterism gone, haywire. I mean, you don't have to impugn their motives. You just observe that it's there, and it's like a gun. You don't know why it's there, but it could be used. When you do a nuclear device, this is kind of an error. This, I think, should be uranium. But you use, in the primary for optimal use, you use plutonium. Actually, if you want to mix for perhaps, but you want plutonium to get a really efficient warhead to keep the weight down. So you'd want uranium and plutonium. As I pointed out, they have not that much uranium compared to the United States and Russia stockpile or in weapons. They are planning to have a whole lot more, way in excess of what's required. And, here shows, the surplus is beyond any domestic requirement. And so too with the plutonium. This is even more severe because with uranium, they have a way to take care of it. They just use the enrichment to
that they have for peaceful purposes, but used for military purposes, because they have a surplus in excess of maybe several thousand bombs worth, depending on what they do, at least 1,000 bombs worth a year of uranium enrichment capacity. But they don't have much plutonium. I mean, I don't know what this figure sounds, but it's low. Well, how do you get around that? Oh, what you do, oh, they also don't have any military production capacity. One dismantled machine, one that hasn't run for, I don't know, 20 years, only makes 75 triggers or bombs a year. And of course, if they started that, we'd go haywire nuts and say, oh my God, they're starting a weapons program in a big way again. So they could pull from these machines. The reason I'm going through this is these are the threats that people who are Japanese actually think about. They're not just thinking about North Korea, they're looking at China. Here's a machine set that's just like old song, but it's sufficient for 100 bombs a year. They could use light water reactors for reasons I've laid out, plus you can run these things so they do produce just weapons grade material. We actually thought about doing this, so it's not so crazy. In any case, they can run the light water reactors that they have, or the heavy water reactors, get lots of plutonium. And then you do this. You get that French reprocessing plant, and you start reprocessing roughly 8 tons per year. And, admittedly, it's a few years out. You'll be around. I won't. I'll be dead. You'll be alive. You'll get to see if they do this. 15, 20,000 bombs worth hanging around. Now, I'm not going to go any further on this technical stuff. I'm going to end on some upbeat notes. Nothing in this briefing is inevitable. If it was, I wouldn't waste any time learning about it. You are problem solvers, not fact finders. You're getting educated to try to solve problems, things that could go one way or the other, and you want it to go to the white, not to the black. So let me close out with a couple of suggestions. I think you're looking for leverage points. You sent that to me in the email, so just some thoughts. Maybe we need to lower the demand for nuclear power generally, because it's the demand for nuclear power that drives the arguments for reprocessing and enrichment, which allows for the overhang for weapons options. You'll notice that in Japan, they're having a hard time restarting these facilities. Every day they discover something else, which is sinking in at the corporate level now and may eventually have political resonance. And that is, the economy's not falling apart. It's pretty much doing what it normally does without nuclear power, which was the prediction that it would fall apart. They may not need to expand nuclear power as much as they claimed. If you don't have a lot of reactors producing spent fuel, the argument for reprocessing goes down. The argument for enriching, which Japan has, goes down. That ought to be of interest. I don't know if you know it, but Taiwan has announced it's going non-nuclear. If it pulls that off, people will go, hey, look at that, a little Germany in Asia. You might want to focus on that, make sure the Taiwan example succeeds. Got a project on that, trying to work with this department so that we make that happen. I would stop this Gen 4 program, reorient it. Focus on things that don't require recycling, like fast reactors. In particular, how about focusing on spent fuel storage? One of the arguments for reprocessing is it makes it easier to deal with waste. I think the arguments are pretty goofy and wrong, but people argue that. If you want to see the counter argument, I recommend reading Frank von Hippel from Princeton University. Very good. In any case,
maybe we should work on spent fuel storage in dry casts, concrete casts, which is what we actually are doing anyway, and cooperate on that. And then we have weapons, plutonium, that we're turning into mixed oxide fuel at a place called Savannah River. You want to look into it. Project's in big trouble. Technically, it's depending on the French to make things work. I used to have a bike shop. The one thing I did not like doing was working on French bikes. Having French parts. Way complicated, extra parts, and total life. They have a hard time helping us finish a plant in Savannah River. I'm a Republican. But even I have to admit that Obama got one thing right. He opposed this project finally, late, in an effectless fashion, but at least he got it right. Congress is still funding it. Maybe we should defund that. Do the one thing Obama got right, and talk to the Japanese about cooperating on how to get rid of plutonium, because there are lots of alternatives besides bombs. We work on that. Think Gen 4 about safety. Because if you have another accident, that's it. I don't know, it may be too late. I don't know if nuclear power has a future. But boy, is it another accident. That's, I don't know. You know, on the third or fourth time, people will actually pay attention. Also, it may be time to take a look at security alliance concerns. We have never told the Japanese, if you go ahead with the Rakan Shuttle, it's going to carry pressure from the Chinese and South Koreans to follow in suit. The South Koreans made very clear, the Japanese go ahead, they want to be doing recycling as well, and they're going to demand that we allow them to do that, because it's our spent fuel that they're going to recycle, and we've allowed the Japanese to do it. Why wouldn't we allow the South Koreans to do it? Aren't they equal alliance partners? Shouldn't they be allowed to? So if the Japanese go ahead, then the South Koreans go ahead. If either one goes ahead, the Chinese will do what? Nobody knows. Might just go ahead with this. Is this good? So we have piles of plutonium, lots of enrichment capacity, in a region where there are no historical animosities, there are no territorial disputes, everybody's getting along, right? The way to look at this is nuclear kerosene on a smoldering fire. You don't pile this stuff up without taking an enormous risk on a nuclear 1914. By the way, does anybody need to know what 1914 refers to? It's okay to know. What does it refer to? 100th anniversary of World War I. By the way, nobody to this date can explain what happened there. I mean, I have a favorite theory. It's the Germans' fault. Actually, I think that is the explanation. But people still are debating this. Is this the next thing? Except it's not going to be with high explosives. It's going to be nuclear explosives. We have a lot at stake here. Is there any way that our alliance with South Korea is going to be made easier if they have a nuclear option? By the way, one of the arguments among my more hawkish friends is, well, they're friends. Better them than the North Koreans. Should be fine. We want to let them have what they need. Or they should at least have the option to. I'll tell you a story. By the way, cut me off when I'm I used to work for a great man. I had the privilege of working for two great men. One of them was somebody I didn't know initially. He was the former ambassador to China, and he got fired because he helped the protesters in Tiananmen Square get the hospitals. That was it. He got fired. But he was old school. He was from Yale. He went to the company. That's the CIA. He was a station chief in Laos. He was trying to get that war straightened out. Boy, did we screw that up. Oh, well. Then he became the coordinating council representative of Taiwan. Then he became ambassador to South Korea. He was born and raised in China, so they made him ambassador to China. And he didn't even need the State Department. He had his own contacts and knew the language. How scary is that? And he didn't pay for it. He just did it on the basis of merit. I mean, if you have enough of these people, God only knows what would happen. When he came into the office, he took a job as assistant secretary because first President Bush the elder asked him. He was a friend of the family. By the way, that's about 5 steps down from where he was. Assistant secretary is, and now it's nothing. So, but he did it because he's a public servant. He didn't need the job. It was already accomplished. But he did it out of a sense of duty. And he got this office called the International Security Affairs Office, which had regional desks for everything but NATO. And then there was this weird protrusion. It was my office, and it was in there. He called me up. He said, I don't know who you are, but where's she at? I don't know why you're working for me. I have regional desks. Why should I have a functional desk? And I explained to him. I said, well, they used to have it over in the functional desk at ASD, Assistant Secretary of Defense, and it used to throw bricks at your operation, and the only way to resolve the disputes was to have 2 assistant secretaries argue. I said, by me working for you, you can resolve it without ever talking to an assistant secretary. He smiled. He said, all right, you're in. Then he said, now let me tell you what I know about proliferation. I said, all right. He said, well, proliferation is what we don't want our adversaries to do and what we tolerate or encourage our friends to do. And he smiled at the jackass, smart ass. He said, how did I do it? I said, well, you get half credit. He says, how's that? I said, well, I understand I read up on you. You went to Yale. He said, I did. I said, I bet you if you went to Yale, you like Long Island teas. And he said, well, actually, I do. I said, all right, I understand you also were ambassador to Korea. And he said, yes. I said, well, imagine you're out in the back porch of your embassy palace with your wife drinking a Long Island tea on the weekend, and you hear a roar in the sky, and you look up and you see a rocket headed north, and it has the letters ROK. I said, is that a good or a bad day? And he looked at me and he said, oh, crap, so we have to worry about our allies. He said, yeah, you get full credit now. How many of you read Sun Tzu, The Art of War? Ooh, can't do this class without it. It's a very short book, that book. One of the best passages in that book, by the way, Chinese reader. Actually, Japanese reader. And it's in English, so you can read it. He laid out how to go after an adversary. And the very best way, he said, the bloodless way, the brilliant way, is to totally eliminate the adversary's strategy by showing that it's not possible to be executed. That's a way to demoralize them so they never fight you. That's the best way. Does anybody know what the second best way? If you can't do that. One of the reasons we can't do that is, I don't know whether you checked, but we don't have any enemies officially. And if you don't have a clear-cut enemy, it's very hard to attack someone's strategy because, well, you don't have any enemies. We have potential adversaries. It's not quite the same thing. So what's the second best thing? Break up his alliances. Well, we have alliances. That one we do. And the way you can break it up is let each ally feel like it has to go on its own and can. So that when there's a crisis, you don't really know exactly what they're going to do. Okay, we're now running out of time. So, you don't want to see this happen. The last general suggestion, and I had several others, is maybe if you're losing money doing plutonium, maybe you ask the Japanese to defer. They've already delayed the operation of Rakan, I think, about 5 times already. So what's wrong with announcing a 6th and saying, as a matter of policy, you're delayed? If you did, you'd then run to the Chinese and say, maybe you should delay it. Does anybody know what happened last August? It was front page news in Wall Street Journal and New York Times. There was a demonstration, and it was in China at a place that they were going to site the reprocessing plant that they bought from the French. 10,000 people came out for 4 days, and even communist China folded. They said, okay, we won't do it.
and we'll now have hearings if and when we cite it again. So that thing is not exactly on a rapid trajectory to completion anymore. What we can tell them is if you don't do the deferral, maybe the Japanese will change their minds, and then you'll get the South Koreans to boot. Sounds like a great idea. And by the way, we should probably cut out our MOX program as well. So there's some ideas. I have about 10 others, but just to give you some idea. This is a problem. Go solve it. That's your problem set. So questions to help you solve it.
Questions and comments?
Oh, come on. I don't bite. I'm not even part of the requirements. Go ahead.
Well, seeing as a lot of your suggestions kind of take away the motivation for a lot of what our nuclear department does, I'm curious.
You've got a lot of work. There's plenty to clean up. There's plenty to operate for quite a long time.
Well, I've always wondered this by the connection between nuclear power and nuclear weapons.
Yes.
It seems like, in general, it's not so much that nuclear power plants are the best way to produce weapons, just a way to do so while pretending you're not.
Yes.
So, considering you showed us weapons that had U-238 as the primary component that
I think U-235.
Oh, there was one that used the lithium-6 for boosting that was labeled uranium-238.
Well, that would be the thermonuclear outer shell for a two-stage device. It's a little advanced. Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of changes the question, because I was just going to say that if that was the case, then natural uranium, you don't even need a reactor to.
Let's just say two-stage thermonuclear devices generally aren't the first thing a country does. I've never seen that yet, but it's a new and exciting world. Maybe 50 years from now, that's what they'll come out of the gates with. Right. I think with regard to power, there's an essay you might take a look on, Serious Rules for Nuclear Power Without Proliferation. And it's just a bunch of suggestions by everybody else and a few by Victor Galinsky and I. And you staple them all together and you say, well, this might not stop it, but if you were serious about preventing this, you would do these things, and we're not. And the rejoinder is, oh, that's impossible. And then the rejoinder is, well, if that's impossible, I don't think it is, but that's what people say, then maybe you shouldn't be pushing it so much. I mean, there's something nutty about this field from a policy standpoint. Sorry. And it's not your fault. Yes. Someone else?
They have a crisis simulation, so they're chopping at the bit to get to it.
Well, good luck. I think what you want to be looking for are ways to convince Japan that you can lean on China. That's a leverage point. And I had the list of things I wanted to go through that I could, but I won't, that would tell you how you lean on China through the nuclear cooperative agreement we've just struck and how you interpret it. And it is a target-rich environment, let's just say. If you can slow their move to reprocessing U.S. origin spent fuel, and if you can expand what the definition of U.S. origin spent fuel in China is, and you can have cred with the Japanese when you ask them to defer. That'll allow you to move and lean on the Chinese who have reasons of their own to defer. And once you get deferral, even for a week, you have a situation where when someone changes their mind, it sets off alarm bells. Right now, no alarm bells for anything. Not good. Since they're going to just skedaddle, and how shall I put it? You've already figured out the answers. Send them. I'm curious to learn. One of the most seditious things you can do in Washington is read nonfiction and let people know that you're doing it. So here, you can do it, and no one knows. By the way, there are two other seditious things you can do in Washington that will get you in trouble. I mean, if you want to have a career in Washington, the first thing you need to do is if you do the nonfiction reading, don't let anybody know. Because they'll be afraid that you'll correct them in conversation. So you don't, nobody wants to be around those kinds of people. The second thing is listen and let people know that you're listening by remembering things. That also is something people frown on in Washington. They don't like being around you, but you should correct them. The thing you're not to do under the under the most extreme and depressing circumstances ever, which will get you probably jail, however, is your job. If you do your job, you'll get in trouble because what you're supposed to be doing is complaining about it, looking for another one, or trying to get somebody else to do it. And everyone else is doing that. And if you do your job, you'll show up the whole system. What you're here for is to experiment in all three seditious activities. You're allowed to read nonfiction and talk about it. You're allowed to listen and remember and show that you remember. And you're allowed to be earnest in your studies and be proud of it. Be careful. When you leave this place, it isn't necessarily the thing you want to be showing off. But now is the time to do it. Because when you get out there, it'll be frowned upon. I'm sorry. So, in that spirit, I have 3 books. They're free. One is the collected insights of 20 years of paid research. I mean, this book is roughly worth, I don't know, $20 million. It's free. My wife designed the cover, so, it's perfect in every respect. It takes 2 hours to read, and all sorts of people on the left and right have actually read it and like it, which is not supposed to happen. So you can read that. And it has a big section on, you guessed it, East Asia. The other book just came out. Let's see if, I don't know if anyone gets this. Does anybody see something unusual at the bottom? I mean, does that suggest something? Because this book cover design, I think it's failed. What do you see at the bottom? You do! Great idea. No one else seems to know that. Should We Let the Bomb Spread is a collection of essays. It's a debate series. And it's timed by accident to correspond to Mr. Trump's suggestion that maybe we should, whatever. And then finally, a book on some of the key loopholes in the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. I still think that agreement matters. I'm an oddity in that regard generally, and as a conservative, a big oddity, but it's an interesting series of identified problems. These things are here for your consumption, and they're free. I'm going to leave them up here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.